So, today on the podcast, we have the privilege of speaking to Vish Viswanathan sir, a global business leader in Dallas, Texas. So, with over 35 years of experience in corporate strategy, business development, and enterprise transformation. So, Viswanathan sir's work spin around travel, transportation, hospitality, and IT industry, where he has led global initiatives and built global teams and also crafted innovative go-to-market strategies. Outside the corporate sphere, Viswanathan sir is a qualified psychological counselor, a mentor with Stanford Seed, and an angel investor who is passionate in nurturing early stage ventures. So, in today's episode, we can explore Viswanathan sir's philosophy of focus and his personal techniques of being clarity and presence, and also how, in today's world, leaders and entrepreneurs can thrive in the world of constant distractions and complexity. What does mental focus mean to you personally, sir? So, how do you protect it from the amidst strategic chaos and also high stack decisions making, sir?
Very good question. Mental focus is something that everybody has to develop. What is mental focus, first of all? What is that we mean mental focus? Being present. So, when you're working on something, being present, you're paying a full attention to what you're doing. Being attentive to all the information that is coming to you that you can use to make the decision or do the work you have to do, and being very efficient with how much you spend your mental energy on trying to process the information. Now, what are the things that are important here? You ought to be able to prioritize all the activities you have to do and only make use of the information that you are needing to make a decision, which also means that you have to not be distracted. So avoiding distractions is a very key part of this mental focus. By doing this, by practicing this activity of mental focus, you are able to do things much more efficiently, producing better results. So the question becomes, how does one get the mental focus? So what are the things that you have to do in order for you to get the mental focus to do the activities, right? Some examples I can give you is, one is, you only control things you control. You don't worry about things you don't control. Most often what people end up doing is that they end up thinking about all the different issues, things that may not be in their control. So that's only going to distract you and trying to take your mind away from focusing what you have to do. So control what you can and let go of the rest. Second thing is try to do things in small chunks. Instead of doing everything in one stroke, trying to break down the problem into smaller problems and focus on individual tasks that we have to do in order to accomplish the end result. And third thing I would say is that do more mental resilience training by doing meditation, mindfulness, etc. All that. Those things could be largely helpful in making sure that you're only focusing on that. Ultimately, what it means is to do the work that you have to do in a more focused and confident way without getting any distractions come in the way of not being able to do a good job. That doesn't mean you're disconnected from reality. You're not ignoring reality. Reality, there's a lot of distractions going to be in reality. Anytime you're going to work on a problem or make a decision, you are going to have multiple inputs coming from different people. You can't avoid that. So being mentally alert and mentally focused doesn't mean you're ignoring reality. You're choosing to use your energy and your attention on things that really matter and remove those things that don't really help making this particular decision, and combining that with the most efficient use of your cognitive resources is the key to doing things in a mentally focused way.
So, coming on to the next question, sir, have there any moments in your career, sir, where being mentally or regaining your mental focus had the difference between your success and the failure?
Lots of things. When you work in a 35-year-old career, you're going to have a lot of occasions where you have to do this thing, and particularly when you're in leadership roles, you're constantly required to make decisions that could be very significant impact, not only on your and your career, but on the company and others' careers also. So there are many occasions. I can give you a few examples. Running a company, a mid-size IT services company in the US, a publicly listed IT services company. Our business was basically doing IT services for a bunch of clients in the US and abroad. Some of them were very critical, what they call strategic clients, big clients who produce a lot of revenue, and most of them were other side of clients. One particular occasion, one of our biggest client, a strategic client, decided that they wanted to revamp the contracts and do things differently, which meant they said they wanted to renegotiate the contract with us. And their condition was they had to cut down their cost by a certain amount. Now here is a decision we had to make, that I can't afford to lose this customer, clearly, because it's a very big customer. The impact is significant. At the same time, I can't take a decision that the customer wants that's going to not be in the long-term best interest, financial interest of our company. So here, I had a choice to make, right? I can think of two things. I can focus on all the things that could go wrong, fear of failure. What if I make the decision? What if it go wrong? Or I can think of something else and focus on things I can do at this point in time to get the output I wanted. So a lot of times what happens when you encounter situations which are critically between success and failure, people gravitate towards avoiding fear of failure. When you go with that approach, your focus shifts from being trying to get something done to avoid something not happening. Now, when that happens, you become very disempowered, right? You think about all the possibilities, all the consequences. That's one choice. Other choice is to not worry about and then look for what you want to achieve, given that you can only control things that are in your control. So in this particular example, I figured that we have to keep this customer. At the same time, we want to make sure the business makes sense to us. So despite all the distractions where people getting worried about this customer going away or the other companies trying to say that they're going to win the business over, those are all distractions coming. I decided to focus and say, I want to win this business and I want to do the right way. So I focused on what all things in my control. I know that the work that we're doing is high quality. I can tell the customer about the effort. I know that I can tell them we can do it in stages. Instead of trying to change the whole contract, we can probably do a pilot on some aspects of the project and do things differently to meet their requirements. So I was thinking more about what all things I had to do to succeed in this conversation, decision making, versus worrying about what could go wrong if I don't do all these things. So that's the difference between looking at the problem from avoiding fear of failure, avoiding things first to trying to accomplish something, and most importantly, eliminate all the distractions that come in the way, because distractions are going to be there in every single decision you make. That is one example I'll give you. Several other examples when we go through a very large strategic transformation in companies, whether I'm helping some other client company or doing it our own company, you may have to make decisions that could have very broad impact. Like you want to maybe restructure a product line, maybe you want to focus on one geography and less focus on another geography. And these are all very, very big decisions impacting a lot of people. Here again, the same thing, you could worry about all the negative consequences of what you're doing, or think about why you're doing and what you could do with the information and the control you have to make the best decision possible. This is something that people learn over time. This is not something you're going to learn out of the college or school. So through experience, through multiple opportunities to learn, I learned this, and I'm happy to say that in some of the cases, the decisions, despite being very critical, worked out very much in our favor, to a large part because I wasn't focusing on the negative impacts of the decision, but focusing on what needs to get done at that point in time, being attentive, being focused, worrying about the present, not worrying about what will happen tomorrow or yesterday, etc. All that. That's the key to winning those kind of situations. Yeah.
Maybe I think I should shift my mindset, because I mostly think in the negative aspect most of the time.
The most common and easy thing to do is to think through the things can happen, consequences of decisions you're making, and particularly the negative consequences. It's very normal human nature to do that. So one of the things you have to do is to train your mind to focus more on what you need to achieve. Now for that, when I say success could mean different things to different people. In that particular context, the example I gave you, retaining the customer while also getting the right kind of project from them was the key success factor for me. It's not only retain the customer, but both together. So once you have that defined clearly and focus on that, then you not worry about the consequences and go towards that. Yeah.
So do you have any daily or weekly rituals, sir, that you do to reset your mind?
Reset my mind?
Yes. Especially during the cognitively needed period.
Well, there are a few things that everybody has to do, I think. Common things like have a good night's sleep, the basic hygiene you have to practice, healthy eating habits, good night's sleep, exercise. These are all basic hygiene that everyone should do. I mean, those are all things I would say building blocks. If you don't do them, then the chances of you being able to perform are going to be very less. So that's obviously covers for me as well. Particularly what I do different is practicing gratitude. The one thing that gratitude is the most, what I would say is the most ununderstood, not well understood concept actually. Gratitude doesn't mean that you are not to aspire for bigger things. Gratitude means there are many things that you have that you need to understand you got them and you're enjoying them, and you can't take it for granted. So having the opportunity to run a business, having the opportunity to have people who can help you do the business. So practicing gratitude is one thing that I'm trained myself to be more doing, which helps a lot. In my case, I, through various iterations, found long distance running to be my thing to do. So I run several kilometers, 10, 12 kilometers every day to practice for marathons. I run marathons, half marathons and marathons. So while doing long distance running, I feel that my mind is very clear. There's no distraction at the time. A lot of critical long-term decisions that I had to make are actually formulated and ideated when I'm doing the long distance running. So practicing gratitude, long distance running, reflective journaling. Reflective journaling is basically writing down what thoughts go through you in terms of what emotions happened, what actions you did, what lessons you learned from that, and basically a way to introspect with your own experience written down. Thinking about your experience is one thing, writing them down is a very different thing. Writing down them provides you a little bit more clarity on what you went through and use it as a learning exercise. So I do that quite a lot, and of course do all the regular things like mindfulness, meditation, etc. All that. It's a combination of all these things. Hope I keep my mind alert and do all the time. It is important to do because every single day when you're in roles like this, you're going to start facing different challenges, and unless you are going to be prepared when you come to work every day morning. So all these things can help you keep your mind clear and stable and focus on what you need to achieve.
Great, sir. So, when you're mentoring many business leaders and entrepreneurs, sir, how often you think that you come up with distraction? How often you think they come up with the distraction, sir?
Well, whether somebody is distracted or attending is something that people have to understand what that means. And it's also different between being attentive and become focused. People tend to think they're all the same thing. To me, attention and distraction are two sides of the same coin. Now, attention is basically where you are consciously and intentionally and deliberately only focusing on information that you need to focus at that point in time, and work as efficiently as possible by prioritizing all your tasks to accomplish a certain goal. That's what I would say is the thing you try to do. Distraction is where you allow external influences that are not going to be helpful to impact your thinking or reaction. Right? Now, disturbances could be different, distraction could be different things. Something could be external. If you're working in a meeting and you have a loud music somewhere going around, that might be a distraction. That's an external distraction that comes to you, or someone talking in the same room loud, or some other activity going on. There could be internal distractions too. Like you're maybe anxious about something, maybe you are worried about something, or maybe you're thinking about something not directly relevant to what work is going on right there. So distraction could be both. So most people, particularly startup entrepreneurs, when they're working on a certain project, they think about funding, they think about hiring, they think about customer, they think about what does it take to do this, will I have enough money to run the thing. All these are very important things to consider. I'm not saying it's not important. But if you're going to think about all of them all the time while doing a task, that's a distraction to you. You're not focused on what you're trying to do right there. So I think distraction, attention is a very common topic. A lot of entrepreneurs come asking that, how do I make sure I don't get distracted? Now, the other form of distraction is distraction that you can easily avoid. Like, for example, I see a lot of people who are in the middle of a meeting, constantly scrolling their phone, looking for things. It's not like what is there coming in your phone is going to make a very big difference at that point in time. But that becomes a habit, right? Scrolling through your phone, or looking at something, or reading something, or doing some other activity while having a critical thing. Those things are very avoidable. Those things can be trained very easily. This internal distraction, like fear of failure, anxiety that comes in the way of you paying attention, is where I think I help a lot of mentors to say how to do that. Combination of many things, mindfulness practice, meditation, relaxing, not spend too much time working on a project for a long time. Very highly cognitive, demanding task. If you do for a long time, you're not going to be able to sustain the same level of energy and focus. So take breaks in between. There are a lot of tricks and hacks people find, saying that if you work for 48 minutes and take 12-minute break, you get the most efficient. I mean, people found these things empirically. There's no real evidence to show that. But that's an example of where you could improve your efficiency by doing tasks for a certain amount of time and taking breaks. The other thing I would say is that attention and focus are two different things. Attention is where you are able to get information to solve a particular problem, and if you get different inputs, you're able to look at all the inputs as they come in. Focus is subset of that, where you are really focused on that one particular task or solving that problem and nothing else matters to that. Now that involves a lot of mental capacity, to ensure that at this point in time this is the only and most important thing, and eliminating all the distractions that come in the way. So attention is a little bit of a superset of things. Both are important, and focus is even more important for cognitively challenging tasks. When you're thinking about making a decision, writing a program, creating a product, etc., then definitely you should improve your focus, while attention is also equally important for that.
So, as you spoke about doing a specific task, what do you think about multitasking? Because nowadays people think that they can do 2 or 3 things at the same time while not doing anything. According to me, we can't. I won't be able to focus on 2 different things at the same time. But I see many people doing 2, 3 different tasks at the same time.
Now, multitasking is something that is essential. You can't really restrict yourself to doing only one thing at a time. But the key thing is what particular task you're doing at that point in time, and how significant and how important decides how much multitasking you can do. If you're doing, say, couple of not so very mentally, cognitively heavy tasks, yeah, you could do that. You could probably be listening to someone making a presentation at the same time you might be doing checking something. That is not a very difficult thing, because you're trying to get as much information from listening to someone, but that information is not super critical to make any decision at that point in time. It's just information you're gaining over time, and you're doing something else to respond to something that came immediately. If somebody is trying to reach you, then you don't want to lose track of that. So you're doing both at the same time. Clearly, when you start doing that, cognitively our mind is not capable of doing more than one thing perfectly. Mind only can do certain amount of time. It allows you to do multiple things, but the amount of efficiency and output you're going to produce is going to diminish the more things you add to that. It's very simple science, right? As you add more things to that, it's going to change that. So I would say that depending upon the task, depending upon what you're trying to do, that if what you're trying to do is a very critical decision that involves a lot of impact, you're better out not multitasking at that point in time. You want to focus only on the task to make sure you do the very best job and try to get that task done. Whereas in other cases where you're getting a lot of inputs, working on different things, it is okay to multitask. Multitasking provides you the level of efficiency that you can get by minimizing the amount of time spending on that. And in today's world, you may have to do multiple things at the same time. You don't have the luxury of only doing one thing at a time, because the changes are coming very fast. Whether it's technological changes or other changes are coming fast. So you can't afford to say, I'll only focus on this and not anything else. But that has to be a choice, a selective choice you have to make, saying, depending on which task I'm working on, this one needs 100% of my attention to do this. Whereas in some other instances, I might be able to do different tasks at the same time without compromising on the overall quality of the answer.
So, do you believe that sustained focus in the skill leader is come by birth, or it is something that they are being trained for?
Well, most things in life don't come from birth. Other than your blood group and your more things don't come from birth. I guess you could say that there are some people who, by nature, have the ability to do more better concentration on things. It happens. I see people with similar background and similar education skill. Some are able to concentrate more. So there is an element of, I guess, physiology or psychology involved, that some people might be a little bit more predisposed to paying concentration than others. But I had to say that largely it's something that you train yourself for. It's very, very important to train yourself to do that, because if you think about it, these are things that everybody is going to encounter situations when distractions are going to come. So how you are consciously going to train your mind to avoid distractions is practice and experience, right? So I would say that people should do things like mindfulness practice, meditation. Try to avoid thinking about the outcome of every single event when you're doing the event. So concentration is more on getting what you need to do in front of you done than looking at everything beyond that. And the second thing is, if it's a complex enough problem, then you are better off breaking it down into meaningful chunks. So you only focus on that particular piece of work you're doing at that point in time, and then aim to finish that. So all that comes from practice. And as I said, some people have the ability to do it much better than others. That, I guess, it's coming from their physiology. I don't know of any science that has been, any medical science at least, establishing that some people have greater propensity to concentrate. Again, it all depends on how you condition your mind and how you train yourself to do these things, and clearly can be learnt and developed over time for sure. And it's essential to develop over time as well if you are to be successful.
So you have come across various transformation in the industry, sir. So what is the one that is least leadership trait that you have come across in your career, sir?
Oh wow. Lots of leadership traits, a lot of leadership traits are required. I mean, people talk about courage, vision, strategy, I guess. All that is important, all that is very important, obviously. In my experience, what I found is that in the longest time, I thought that if I had the right people and if I had the right idea how to do it and I have the right skills, I can get anything done, and as a leader I'll accomplish. Turns out there's something that I missed all along is care, actually. No, quite often you see that when you are in a leadership position, a management position, you are not doing the work yourself. You are relying on a whole lot of people to do the work the best they can do. So care, what does care actually mean? Care basically means that any situation that's going to be stress and pain and uncertainty and all that stuff, as a leader, what you could do is you could try and absorb that yourself and not let that impact the team below you. That to me is care. That no, okay, even though the situation is critical and it's stressful, if I let that apply or affect people who are underneath, then they're not going to be able to perform because they are not experienced in handling that kind of pressure. So as a leader, you have to take care. So care is something that I learned as I would say probably the most underrated for anyone actually. To be will. Now, what does care also means is that if people have other challenges that they are facing, as an organization, when you're running them, you're looking at them all as employees doing different tasks, and you probably look at them as a person doing marketing or a person doing development, but you're also real people. They also have real challenges. It is important to have empathy to their problems, not cross the line and get into the private space. So it's a bit of a trade-off there, or a bit of a balancing act, that you need to be aware of what they are going through and what kind of things affect them, and try and see what you could do to mitigate that. So that whole caring part. Now, a famous management scholar who has said, Simon Sinek, you might have heard of him, he said that if you take care of your people, they take care of your business. It's very straightforward. It's very simple, very straightforward, very true, that if you take care of them well enough, they feel that somebody is there, have their back and take care of them, they are going to be able to spend more effort and energy and focus on getting the work done. So I think amongst all the characteristics which I thought I learned, care is the one I learned the last actually. And in fact, it should be the one I should have learned the first actually, because that's where the difference between a very good leader and a not so good leader comes, with that keeping the team together, making them comfortable. And if you might know everything, you might know the business very well, you might know all the work very well, you might be very well regarded, all that, but your people aren't really going to be very interested in knowing all that. They'll be a lot more interested in doing things when they know you care about them. Right? That's something that it's not taught, right? We in most management education, they talk about how to achieve results, how to do it efficiently. Very little is being taught about how to handle people, right? And not just handle people in the sense of which person to put in which job, but how to work with them to get the best out of them, knowing they're also humans and they have certain challenges and complications. So you have to work with them and make sure that the work that you're assigning to them doesn't come with any other baggage that's going to make it difficult for them to do the work. So that's a part that leaders has to learn, and that's one I think once I learned that, I would say that there's a dramatic improvement in the way we are able to accomplish results with a lot less efforts. We were able to do a lot bigger things once people know that you've got the back and you're going to take care of them, etc. All that. In today's world, sometimes it's difficult to do that. When things are changing fast around you, then you may be focused and caught up on solving them. But it is very important to remind yourself every day that care to the people who work for you is probably going to be the one which is going to carry the most weight in defining success in your company or an organization or any task for that matter.
This shows how much you care for your team, sir.
No, it's important, that as I said, that the results are much bigger it's clearly what they call a X factor, right? Now you could do certain things yourself, and you probably are very good at doing certain things. But if you're able to get three people to do the same level of efficiency you do, you're providing 3x the output for the same amount of your involvement in that. Now that doesn't mean they're machines. You can train them or to do things, right? If it's a machine, then you can program it, code it. But these are people, so for them to be able to perform, they need to feel comfortable that okay, somebody is there who's not just going to make me do things to make money for them, but they're also going to do things to make it comfortable for me, and I really feel that they really care for me, and they are looking for the best interest of me, and if I have any challenge, they're going to come and help me. It's not being altruistic. I think it's a very essential part. I think people think of doing this as being very altruistic, a very this thing. I don't believe that. I think everyone has to practice that. No matter what level of management you're in, you have to practice that. The higher they are, the more important it is to take care of that as well.
So you have worked in various industries, from being a psychological counselor and also being a mentor. So how do you reconcile your data and decision making when it comes to your decision making, sir?
So obviously I've been working on different fields. Some people think I'm crazy and confused. I'm doing different things, but I actually enjoy all the things that I do. Whether it is doing counseling to people who come for mental challenges, or for investment for startups in angel investment, or we do organic farming, we work with farmers as well. You rely on two things basically, right? One is intuition. Basically, through your own experience and emotional understanding, you know things work a certain way and things work out a certain way. In the absence of any other information, for example, if you go to angel investment, right, when someone comes to me talking about funding for the startup, and particularly if that startup is in a very disruptive space that nobody has done before, I have no data to validate. So I can't wait for data to be available to make a decision. I have to make a decision: is it worth our while to invest in the startup at this stage in time, hoping that they'll benefit and come to the different play. There's no data available. So intuition comes in through experience. We look to see, are these people who are coming and pitching to me capable of execution? So you're not looking at their idea or the plan as much as the people. If I find the way they present their idea, how confidently they present the idea, how willingness they show to be adaptive to the idea, that's to me intuitively says these people are trustworthy and capable of doing that. Even if the idea or the plan that they have right now doesn't work, they will be able to do something. So that's intuition. But I can't always go by intuition only. If I see they're working in a certain market, for example, I have to see what is the market space there, what's the market size, market size. Those are all data, hard data you have. So evidence-based information is also equally important. So I guess when you're working on things like counseling or investments or anything, or any task for that matter, you got to kind of come up and do what is called a synergistic way of doing decision making, where you take the best of all available information, put them together and see what you can make out of that. So in this case, I take information about my experience reading people when they're presenting to me, see how they are doing, looking at the data about their business that is publicly available. The challenge what happens often is that intuition is also subject to bias, because your experience in the past might drive you to think a certain way. And similarly, data also is subject to quality issues. So neither one is perfect. So saying that I can rely more on intuition versus data or vice versa is not going to work out. You understand that intuition has its advantages. It gives you emotional understanding, but there is a bias factor involved. So you're trying to balance out with some objective evidence into data. And similarly, the data can be of not so good quality or incomplete data, which could give you wrong conclusions, where intuition might say, hey, this is not looking at the right answer to here. So combining them both together is something that you have to learn over time. In a counseling context, when clients come to me for counseling, most of my clients are younger people actually, mostly young women actually. And so when they come to me, first few sessions, I wouldn't know what their problem is. They're trying to express themselves, but they also are unable to say what they're going through because they're afraid, what will this person think of me? So I don't have much information about them. But my decision to see what I can do with them is based on observing things I can observe. Okay, see if they have eye contact, are they posture is set, what are the words they're using, what kind of background they're giving. So I form initial initial sort of analysis in them based on intuition, saying this is the likely challenge this person is having, so we need to try to do that. But I can't make a determination at that point until I get more information from them about what is it they are facing, what challenges they have, and then combine them to make an opinion on that. So whether it's investing, counseling, farming, or consulting, at the end of the day, you have to be able to use both intelligently to make the best decision possible.
So, sir, in your mentorship role from Stanford Seed and others, sir, so what is the mindset gap that you see that the early founders have?
Oh, mindset gap. Okay. I think a lot of founders, each founder has his own strengths and weaknesses. And when you look across and work with multiple founders for a long period of time, you tend to see certain patterns. Certain things are very common in all founders. I think the biggest one I would say is that the lack of mental resilience, fear of failure. Mental resilience is basically, it's not like saying you're very courageous, you'll do anything. Mental resilience basically says that not everything you're going to do is going to always work out, but be able to bounce back from failures and develop that capability that, okay, I can always redo it and learn better. So lack of resilience or the fear of failure or other things, and getting very demotivated when things don't work out. That's about the most important thing I think entrepreneurs have to develop very early to be able to succeed. Second thing I see most often is people are either overconfident or too unsure of themselves. Both are bad. Being overconfident in overestimating what you think you know, or not acknowledging what you think you have. Both could be a challenge. So I see a lot of founders either this side or that side. Further, I would say that in multiple founder network companies, for example, the roles and responsibilities are not very clear. Clearly, each one comes with a certain offering to the company, and I see that in cases some founders don't have a clarity on the roles and responsibilities. So they end up either duplicating the work or overlapping work and make decisions that are not consistent with each other. I see quite a lot of that. Other thing I would say is that the fear of missing out. A lot of these founders say that I need to make this much of funding by this time, and there's some artificial, unnecessary metrics they have in their mind, saying that I had to have raised money of this type by this time. My company has to be at this valuation at this time, simply because they look around and only see information people who are claiming they become very well. What they don't realize is that people don't necessarily publish when they don't make something. They only publish when they make something. So the information is highly biased, what you see outside, right? So people get this fear of missing out and try to focus more on things without getting the elementary things right? You have to focus on your product, you have to focus on that. You don't need to focus on funding unless you have a very good idea what your product is doing. So I think these are the things that I see mindset-wise, people getting into distractions and not focusing on that. The most important being the mental resilience one, being able to deal with things that are not working out for you, being able to learn from all the mistakes you make. And quite often you see younger founders tend to get very demotivated and very depressed about things, which is why I tell them that if you want to come to entrepreneurship and startup, it's not going to be an easy game. It's going to be a very tough game. It's a very worthwhile thing to do, but it's not an easy thing to do. You need to be prepared to deal with all those challenges as they come along. The other end of it is very grossy, obviously, once you cross through that, but it's going to take a certain amount of effort and mental resilience to get other side of the equation. So I see people, student entrepreneurs or mature entrepreneurs. Mature entrepreneurs have a slightly different problem. They basically think they know that area very well and they're unwilling to listen beyond that. Now that's a very different problem to have, because clearly as a mentor I may not know enough about that particular domain that they have. But if they're not willing to learn or link to other perspectives because they think they know, that's a very serious problem. Now, no matter what you're going to do, they're not going to accept that because they have made up the mind a certain way. And that would think for people who have been in the industry for a while, who start companies, that I see is a very common mindset. So having the flexibility to say that, okay, I may not know everything and I would like to learn more things, that level of humility is necessary for you to succeed as well.
So, what is one of the biggest internal mindset shifts when you moved from the corporate strategy to something purpose-led?
Okay. This is a long story, though. After you spend a lot of time, I spent almost 3 decades in corporate world, corporate work. I discovered that at some point you have to pivot to something different. And there's a concept I learned at the time called portfolio life. A portfolio life is a concept of how to live a life. The brief way of describing it is you understand financial portfolio. You have different kinds of investments, some risky investments, some not so risky investments, etc. And you create a portfolio which gives the most benefit to the least risk. Life is also the same way. So I discovered about 8 years ago that instead of being in a single directional corporate life doing certain things a certain way, I want to branch out to doing more different things and started doing more stuff. A lot of what I do in that portfolio life is things that involve not corporate work, but work on purpose-led, benefiting people, doing things that not necessarily translate into something meaningful tomorrow. So what is a big mindset shift I had to do? It was very difficult because after working three decades where you are driven by ROI and metrics and stuff like that, where you are focused on achieving certain outcomes, when you do purpose-led work or when you're doing social work, it's more about impacts, not outcomes. You have to find what is the impact you are creating. If you're doing something in education space, how much impact on educational opportunity you're giving to children, or if you're working on a poverty alleviation, how many people are able to help through that, etc. All that. So one of the biggest things I would say is going from being an outcome-driven mindset to an impact-driven mindset, which is a very critical shift, and that's something that is not easy to do. The second thing I would say that in a corporate world, particularly if you're running a public company like I was running for several years in the US, you're managed and measured by every 3-month increment. Every quarter you have to produce a result and you have to say this is what I did, and the analyst in the Wall Street will say A or nay, and then the stock will go up or down. So you're always focused on short-term results. Whereas when you're doing this kind of social purpose-led work, you're not looking for any short-term outcomes. These are all very long-term based, where you have to look to see what would be the impact in a longer time horizon, not a very short time horizon. So that shift from trying to optimize the outputs in a short-term basis versus look to be a little bit more big picture, it's a significant mindset change you have to have in doing that. And the third thing I would say that in a corporate world or any leadership world, at the end of the day, it comes down to individual achievement. Now, you want to say that as a leader, you are able to achieve this for this company or something like that. When you're coming to this kind of things, it's a collective achievement. The impact that you create isn't going to be attributable to any one person or any one set of people, right? It has to be across the whole cohorts of people who are impacted by that. So going from being an individualistic thinking to a more collectivist thinking, which is very different from Western philosophy is very individual thinking, and our Eastern philosophy has always been collectivist thinking. So in some sense, for me, the transition was less difficult because we are programmed to be more collectivist thinking in our young age. Professionally, are doing more individualist thinking. So coming to purpose-led work would mean I had to shift from that to here, which is relatively less difficult change compared to someone who has not known that. The other thing I would say that when it comes to corporate work, most of it is transactional relationship. You have customer transactions you're doing with customers or board members or investors. You could be very strategic about it, but at the end of the day, it's all transaction. The relationships are born out of some transaction coming out of that. When you're doing this kind of social work, it has to be a partnership. You can't have a transactional relationship saying you can't do that. I'll do a certain transaction that will give me something in this, because that's not the way it works right now, right? So changing your mind from being transactional in nature to more partnership and long-term growth is important. I think by far the most important difference I would say that in a corporate world you have authority, responsibility, and accountability. When you're doing work, volunteer work or social work or purpose-led work, you have responsibility and accountability but no authority. You can't tell people to do certain things because you are doing it because you want to do something. And in voluntary organizations, everybody has a responsibility. No one person has authority. You can't tell me volunteers only do this. They're volunteers for a reason. They want to come and do on their own accord, right? So having this ability to produce outcomes without having the authority means you have to be able to work with a very different set of people with very diverse perspectives. So accumulating and working across different perspectives and taking them all towards the same end result is a much different ball game than running an organization where everybody has to listen to you. You have authority. So since I am the CEO of the company, people are going to take my instructions as instructions and try to accomplish that. Whereas in running in a voluntary organization, you can't do that. Transitioning from that command and control authority to doing something like this is one of the biggest changes. It's not easy to do. It takes a while to do that. Again, comes back to practice, etc. All that. And finally, I would say is that it has to also look at collaborations, a lot of collaborations. You can't create big impact just working on your own. You need to work with lots of different stakeholders, and you have to look out for the stakeholders' benefit also while doing that, which means that you may have perspectives and opinions that could be very different from your basic thinking. And you can't let your basic thinking come in the way of taking those inputs from people when trying to achieve a big task. Because at the end of the day, this could mean different things to different people, right? So you need to make sure all their interests are captured, not just what you have in your mind, and be able to combine them both in a very meaningful way to come up with a plan to do that. So the range of planning is long term, it's more impact driven, it's more collectivist, it's more collaboration based, it's more about getting things done without authority but responsibility. All these things combined would be the kind of mind shift change. It doesn't come very easy. And I tell you, I struggled for a long time when I used to say that why can't people do things what I tell them to do? And I realized that I don't have authority to do that. They do it because they're coming to do something good on their own. And also because this mentality of measuring things very fast. Because in a corporate world, in management education, they say you can't manage what you can't measure. You're taught that regularly, right? You can't manage what you can't measure. Now, in a work like this, measurements are not easy. What impact I cost is not tangibly measurable. So if you accept that philosophy that you can't manage what you don't measure, then you won't be able to do anything in this world. So you have to understand that you may not be able to measure certain things, yet you have to manage them and bring the outputs you want to produce. Now that getting out of this one way of looking at managing, measuring versus doing things is also a very big change that you have to get used to do that. I think at the end of the day, when I moved from a corporate career to a more portfolio life, lots of learning. And I would say that I probably learned more in the last 7-8 years in this migration from there than what I learned in corporate life for 20 years actually. That's the amount of learning that is enabled by doing this. So yeah, absolutely. The shift of your thinking should be very, very, very dramatic in this case. Yeah.
So looking back, sir, what is the one core habits or values that kept you anchored throughout in the transformative industry, as it's a fast changing industry like IT, automation, everything. So what is the core habits that kept you, sir?
Well, what does it take to succeed when working in different industries? I mean, obviously, not many people are going to have the opportunity to work in only one industry, right? You have to be able to, as you grow up in your career and leadership, you might have to look at different industries. What's the most important one? Many things. Adaptability is the first one. You need to be able to adapt. Adaptability means different things, right? It means that being able to understand things that are very different from what you have learned in the previous business. The drivers of this business could be very different from the drivers of the business you worked before. Simple example, I had moved from product-based companies to service-based companies in the same industry, not even different industry. Thinking is very different. Product-based industries, or you do spend a lot of money, invest in IP, and then you try to monetize for a longer period of time. Whereas services business, you have to basically do execution regularly to make money. It's a very execution-intensive business. So adaptation. How do you adapt from your thinking you're doing in a product-type business to a service business? Across industries, clearly you have to be able to learn what that industry is about. So paying attention, being very attentive about what's going on in the industry, talking to experts in that particular industry to see what are the drivers that drive the business there. I think more importantly, having an open mind and trying to say, I don't need to know everything. I don't need to have known everything and learned everything to perform well. I can always learn, which is what I would characterize as a growth mindset, what we call growth mindset, right? That understanding and acknowledging that I may not know everything, but I am capable of learning all these things, and I have the trust and confidence in my ability to get the information I need or the knowledge I need to gain from people or from the industry to do that. At the end of the day, as you go to senior positions, the kind of responsibilities you have are not very different. The industry might be different, the drivers might be different, but how you're going to accomplish them, talking about this mental focus and trying to avoid distractions, all those come into play in your job at that level, regardless of the industry. right? So adaptability, having certain core beliefs about you that I'm capable of learning, I'm confident of learning. With practice, I can get better. Of course, certain core actions like mindfulness, meditation, or being able to relax and not get caught up in all the day-to-day activities, socializing. All these things are required for you to be able to have a balance. And people talk about work-life balance, and I don't like the word work-life balance because it makes it sound like the two opposite ends of the spectrum. To me, I think work is part of life, not separate. People say work-life balance. I said, how can you separate them? What I would say in that case is that focus on all the aspects of your life, not just only one aspect of the life. By doing that, you're enabling your mind to have the ability to absorb different things in different industries. Now, ultimately, you have to be expert in the industry to succeed. So you have to give yourself the time to learn all the things required to be learned about the industry. And by having an open mind and collaborating with people and believing in yourself and trusting in yourself, having that growth mindset would probably what you need to have, which I think it helped me a lot in going from a transportation industry to an IT industry to a more of a social work now. I see the responsibility is the same. I had to ensure that the organization performs to its very best, produces the best outcome in the most efficient way possible. The actual outcome might be different, but the process of getting the outcome is exactly the same. By having this mindset, that I can learn the IT business, the driver's IT business is different from transportation business, but the confidence that you can learn it, lean on people to do it. At the end of the day, you have to seek help. You're not going to be able to get everything on your own. So having the humility to say, I just don't know certain things, and be able to go to someone and say, I need to learn this thing and please tell me how to do this thing. That humility is also required. Once you have all that, I think you can work on any industry and succeed actually.
So, if you have the ability to gift one mental framework to the entrepreneurs or the leaders, sir, so what would it be and why?
Mental framework.
Yes.
Interesting. I guess it goes back to the previous point I made, right? Entrepreneurs are going to be facing lots of challenges. Not everything is known, a lot of uncertainties. I guess you have to have the same growth mindset concept I talked about earlier, that the ability, the feeling or the belief that things can be learnt, that I have trust in my ability to learn things. I don't need to do everything all by myself. I can always lean on other people to do that. So this growth mindset is probably the most important trait. I think people have to learn this is how things have to be, and doesn't have to be a fixed mindset. Try to not expect things to work a certain way, and keep that flexibility in knowing that if things don't work out the way I believe it's going to work, I still have the opportunity and the choice to do things differently. Now, most entrepreneurs, as you know, start off with an idea and start off with certain plans. Very rarely are able to continue with the exact same idea and plan. At various points, they have to do a lot of pivoting. Now, if you don't have this growth mindset, if you have to change certain things, and if you're afraid of changing, then you have a problem. You're not going to be able to proceed. So I would say for any entrepreneur who's trying to start a business, I would say that start up with this open-mindedness, willingness to learn, acknowledge you don't know anything, understand you can lean on people to get the help from there, and trust the process, trust the system, and trust in yourself more than anything else. That level of trust and confidence has to be gained. You're not going to be. Nobody is going to give you that. Once you have that and you develop that trait, then you'll be successful no matter what.
How would you personally define effective or performance days, sir? Whether it is based on the outcome or the clarity, alignment, or it is something different?
High performance day. So, okay. I think it depends on the context you're working on. If you look back at my corporate world, for example, a high performance day is when I would have achieved a lot of outcomes for my company, what the company expected me to do. Now, if the company wanted me to grow the revenue by certain much or something, that would be the biggest factor in deciding that. But I think in general, two things you have to clarify. One is high performance, one is peak performance. Right? The different things, right? Peak performance is where you are doing something extremely well for a very short amount of time. It's like, imagine somebody who's going to be running a sprint, 100-meter sprint in the Olympics. All it matters is on that day, on that race, they have to do the very best to get the right time. That's peak performance. That's not sustainable. High performance to me is something that is doing much better than others and sustaining it over a period of time. So a lot of the work you're going to do as an entrepreneur or a manager is not peak performance, it's high performance, right? So to me, I think, in the current world where I'm doing things that are purpose led, it's not outcome. It's definitely not. Outcome is over a period of time. The clarity you get in saying that I want to do this, and understanding and knowing that I may not know everything in that, and trying things beyond the comfort zone, where I try to do something that I haven't done ever before, and I want to accomplish something, and even if I'm marginally successful in what I accomplish, that would be a very good day in my mind. Perhaps not a peak performance, but definitely a high performance. But I also have to understand that I should be able to replicate that over time. It's not that I can do one difficult task today and then say I've done very well. I have to develop the ability that I can do multiple days of similar activity where I'm trying to do things that are beyond my comfort zone, etc. Output matters. At the end of the day, you could say that no, I'm doing all the very best and I'm learning everything, but at some point you have to show. So I wouldn't say output is not a factor, but amongst those choices, clarity, output, or mindset, I would say clarity would be the one which I think would be a better definition of what a high performance day is. And again, high performance is also subject to what you look at performance. How do you define performance? Much like how do you define success? You have to define performance to certain meaningful metrics, not necessarily tangible metrics, but some level of manageable metrics. So I think that as long as you have the open mind and willing to accept that you have to do stuff differently and do things beyond what you are doing before, and try out new things, even if it means it may not work. If I do that, that day will definitely a high performance day for me.
So, any final mantra, focus mantra that you can give to the young generation and everybody, sir?
What I would say that a lot of what we talked about today are things that anybody can develop with sufficient amount of training and time and patience. Anybody can develop that. I don't think any of these things are rocket science, to be honest. All of them are fairly well known, just that we need to be able to recognize the importance of all those things. What I would say is that the most overriding thought is that believe in yourself, most importantly. Don't attach your worth to the outcome. Your worth is your worth. Outcomes may not necessarily match your worth. So don't tie your identity to the results. Tie your identity to who you are and what you are doing, which also translate into willing to learn, willing to accept when things are not known to you, etc. All that. Be bold, and it's only once you're going to live only once, and you have to live the best way possible and live for yourself, not live for others. A lot of people, and most people, think about others. What others think of me and what others are going to tell about me and how to judge me, etc. So the less you worry about that, the more successful you're going to be. It doesn't mean you should ignore people. At the same time, don't get to do things trying to impress someone or trying to do something for someone, and be as bold and as objective as possible.
Thank you, sir. It was very pleasure talking to you. And from your insights, we realize that focus is not just element; it's a philosophy of life where it is. As always, stay curious, stay focused, and keep evolving. Until next time, take care and thanks for tuning.